Hello, everyone, and welcome to IGEL Weekly, episode 9. I had to chat with Chris for a minute to figure out which episode we're on. I was telling these guys just now, this is podcast number 4 of the week for me. And I love doing it. And I think we talked about that last week with Seb, that gets busy and hard to keep up with the numbers, but the content keeps coming, which is awesome. I've got with me Chris Feeney, the channel. Chris, is it fair to call you a sales engineer, or do you have a specific channel? And I've been calling you the wrong title for the last.
That's my official title, although some days it feels I'm more like channel sales engineer admin guy, but
He does it all.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes, right?
That's right.
Well, for the next hour, you're my co-host. So that's your title, co-host.
Thank you, sir.
We've got with us Mike Bermondi. Mike is also with IGEL, and I believe Mike's responsible for working with this little company called Amazon and their offerings. And I'll never forget to go back to 1998 or so, and my brother and I are sitting in his garage, and he's talking about this company, Amazon, whose stock price just keeps going up, 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 and all they do is sell books and lose money. And I'm like, yeah, that didn't make sense. But, man, somewhere along the way, they decided to get into IT and hosting data centers. And, Mike, maybe you can tell us that story along the way. I'm sure you've heard it once or twice. But, Mike, what is your official title at IGEL?
Yeah, I am the business development manager responsible for Amazon here at IGEL.
Okay. So are you technical background, business background, or all the above?
Kind of all of the above. So yeah, 10 seconds for me. I was in IT operations for about 10 to 15 years. And then, yeah, not bad, right? You see it all, the good, the bad. I have a real passion for end users and kind of taking their perspective and working my way up. And then I've been in enterprise software sales for about the last 5.5.
Okay. And I love that you just brought up end user computing. I mean, when you're in IT, you're either a data center guy that's just buried in the data center somewhere, or you're facing the end user with apps or operating systems or whatever. And they're probably two different types of people, really, if you analyze them at the heart of them.
Completely agree. I used to get in trouble. So what would happen is I would be bogged down with an initiative in the data center, right? Setting up virtualization at the time. I mean, this is like mid to late 2000s. And then I would be caught at our users desk asking them, how are you, what are you doing business wise? Can I help, sort an Excel sheet, right? Some basic stuff. And from there, it kind of grew to where, I felt this innate need to connect to the user at that point. And then from there, it just kind of grew.
I think I said it on every single podcast yesterday, as IT is here to help the user get their work done better, more efficiently. And in 2021, add the word securely to it.
Yep.
That's our job. And if we run around, I'll never forget my college girlfriend. I'm sure she's listening. My college girlfriend, I told her I was getting out of logistics and into technology. And her exact words to me were, well, that's good because you like telling people what to do. And I'm like, oh, crap. And to this day, her words haunt me. And I do have to tell people what to do, right? But I also like to think that to some degree, I listen to them to try to figure out what it is they need me to do.
Do we need to have some therapy sessions here? Have a little trust problem here.
We could all use one of those, I think, at this point. But
no doubt.
That's a great point.
Just let me talk it out. That's all I need. Just let me talk it out.
That's fine. Yeah. No, I'm sitting here. It's interesting just hearing this, right? Of how we all kind of began to focus in on end user computing. For me, it was, a little company that decided to pivot towards healthcare and understanding that doctor nurse experience and streamlining that whole workflow thing. And that kind of got ingrained in me for years. And I began to see that more or less across other industries. And it kind of ties into sort of how the IGEL Disrupt conference came about, right? I mean, there was I guess with Bryform kind of going away, there was a need for really having a focused effort on that end user computing experience. And I'll never forget, it was, IGEL lore, certainly an attempt to have a sidebar end user computing conference at a large vendor back in Las Vegas a couple of years ago. That didn't go so well, but we got through it. But I think the point was, you go and you're at these big conferences and it's data center. Where's all the focus on end user computing? And so here we are, just a couple years later, with a huge announcement to talk about today. I'm so jacked.
Yeah. Well, let's do that. So the blog title that Mike was involved. Mike, did you write it? You wrote it, right?
I did. I mean, there was obviously some much needed edits, but yes.
Yeah, if you're like most technical guys, you can come up with content, but you better have somebody else read it before you do something else with it. I live in that world for sure. I need my own personal editor following me around.
Yeah.
Type or say something wrong.
Right.
The title of it is Amazon Workspaces, now available on IGEL OS. I think there's so much there in the Amazon world and the maturity of their public cloud IaaS offering. IaaS, meaning machine workloads, which can be user-centric desktops of some type, or maybe even VDI server-based. But Mike, why don't you tell us to the best of your ability the Amazon story and how they got to where they are, and then we'll start talking about IGEL's new integration with them.
Yeah, no, it's a super cool question. I mean, Amazon has, I think, to really start at the core, Amazon has one of the most unique cultures of any company I've ever dealt with in my entire career, right? And we all deal with a lot, I think, in our respective spheres of what we do. But Amazon in particular, they're based on these 14 core principles. You can Google it, actually. And then very number one is what's called customer obsession, meaning that whoever you're serving dictates exactly what you do, what you develop, where you go from there, right? And there's no boundaries to that, which is really unique, I think, from a corporate perspective and from kind of an enterprise push perspective. And so what that created was this kind of innate inertia. And you mentioned it, right? Like 98, like you're just guy selling books and, at a loss, like what's going on here? That customer obsession, I think in early 2000s led to this concept of creating kind of services for Amazon.com internally, from what I understand. And look, you can look this up anywhere. I think it's well documented, and I'm paraphrasing, so apologies if I get some of this wrong. But from there, those services that served internally were then being able to made available externally, right? And this was at the same time when, Microsoft, under the same breath, was looking at Azure, and Steve Ballmer was doing their thing, but Amazon was very unique in taking more of a customer focus. And from there, it kind of grew and spread like wildfire, again, innately. I think the other key component of AWS, as it's now known, Amazon Web Services, was the fact that each one of those services internally that you see, I mean, you mentioned IaaS, there's a bunch of different other components to that, services that provide that. They actually run as their own little business, meaning they have their own budgets. They kind of compete against each other, which is kind of cool. So again, the alignment to customer obsession to move quickly and to make something happen it's huge. And I think that's a result of what you see today.
Is it as simple as Amazon, Google, Microsoft all looking at their needs to service themselves and going, hey, why can't we just productize? If we do it right, why can't we productize our own, what we're doing for ourselves? Can't we just productize it for others?
I think initially, yeah. I think that's exactly where it comes from. But I think you see three very divergent paths on the result of that. And you see that today, right? You've got GCP, you got Azure, you got AWS, with AWS being the largest in the world, coming from this, this book company. So I think there's those paths are very obvious on where they stand and the route that they took. But Amazon being customer obsessed and then actually translating that into their day-to-day is really shown.
Yeah, I'm just reading up. I remember hearing about sort of, I don't know, maybe I want to say 8-9 years ago, I kind of gotten away from the back end data stuff and was really focused on end user compute. And then I saw, heard AWS come up, I was like, what is that? And didn't really understand that, in the last 10 years plus, Amazon had started, it started off with, they were trying to do something internally. They began duplicating and buying all this equipment and realized, wait a second, we could do this better. Right. And AWS kind of came out of that. It's interesting that the new CEO, Andy Jassy, is actually the guy that kind of helped build that from nothing and is going to take over. And that became a massive, obviously, very profitable situation for them. And I think about this, and with the pandemic, if the whole data center thing didn't happen in the last 10 plus years, what would have happened to businesses? I mean, with no cloud services or even that infrastructure ready, I mean, it would have been very bad. But enough of that. Let's get off that.
That exactly came up with VMware, Nutanix, and Citrix in my podcast yesterday. Is what would the world have been like from a business perspective had we not gotten to where we are and the pandemic happened like 10 years ago. And also think about that from your personal perspective.
Yep.
I went skiing out west. I came back, had a cold, got tested positive. So I get 14, 15 days before my family would let me come home. I went over to a condo and stayed, and I had worked a lot. That was awesome. I also watched a lot of streaming media. 10 years ago, what in the world would I have done all that time? I would have had to read like 4 books, or I'd have just stared at the ducks all day. I don't know.
Well, it would have been an Amazon ebook for sure.
Hey, Chris, comment a minute ago around this book. We joked about Amazon selling books. That's where I got all my exam cram books and whatever for dummies books. That's the only reason I even knew my brother was talking about. But one comment you made was how much money. So they were losing money doing that, but they were setting themselves up to make a fortune, I believe, in what.
Absolutely. Oh man, yeah. When you used to begin to read the story behind it, it's this accident called AWS that all of a sudden turned into a massive profitable situation for them. And then I remember when we started hearing about Azure, AWS had a head start on pretty much everybody because of it. And then it's been catch up. I think they're still in the lead. I don't know what the total numbers are. Microsoft not far behind, but yeah, they what began as sort of an accident to kind of solve some internal issues became a profitable online services situation. And so here we are.
Yeah. And this came up a couple of times yesterday. Amazon they're ahead of Microsoft in terms of the number of virtual machines or what have you. But the thing that kept coming up yesterday over and over again was the maturity of their APIs. That's where they're way ahead. And I know Microsoft's working on it, and they'll probably get neck and neck with them at some point. But the Nutanix Web podcast yesterday, we talked about APIs for deploying physical hardware using the Nutanix operating system and why they did AWS first. It just showed through that Amazon has more history and more maturity in that place, that part of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm a former Newton, so I worked at Nutanix for almost 2 years. So I'm very aware of the kind of divergence, to you guys' point, of talking about companies that are born in this API first mentality. This I don't know how else to explain this kind of core level web construct of making information being able to be pushed and pulled available at a very core level and building from there, right? And I think, you take, again, back to those 3 clouds you talked about, they all had different approaches based on their core businesses beforehand. But AWS was really, outside of, Google, and, I'm not going to talk much about them here because of where they stand in the pecking order, but AWS really took that API first approach and they've embraced it across those business units and those services, which is, I think, becomes super powerful.
And that's where those guys can afford it. So XenTegra has a cloud. It's high speed connected to those other clouds.
Yep.
We'll never be able to develop the APIs for all these other use cases that those guys are, being, like you said, API first. We can't do that. We don't have that kind of money.
And that's the power right there behind it, right? Is that I think AWS provides not only to service like a succinct end user, but it can be a platform, right? I mean, you talk about major companies that run services we all use every day on it, like, Netflix and others, these massive distribution type web first workloads you can't imagine living without, especially during the pandemic, right? With Netflix, but those all run on the AWS platform, which is this, crazy conglomerate and, 15 years experience where they're willing to push the boundaries. And I think it really shows.
Well, Mike, I think I'm going to tee you up really well here. Amazon, one of their services is desktop as a service. And I believe that's where you guys come in as being that, asynchronous solution to allow people to get to that desktop as a service or other things that are hosted in Amazon, like Citrix, for example. But what's going on in the blog here? I think we've probably covered the intro, but what's going on with IGEL and Amazon? That's the new announcement.
Well, I think it comes back to, and look, I don't know what the genesis was of Amazon reaching out to us and probably, others on the device game. But if you think about it, Workspaces, and which is their DaaS offering, right? Amazon Workspaces, their desktop as a service offering. It's been around for quite a while, right? It's one of the most mature services that Amazon offers. I think where this really came from, if I was a betting person, was the result of COVID, right? And what happened was last year in around June or July, Amazon reached out to us, right? And we've, like a lot of companies, right? A lot of companies try to reach out and say, hey, look at us, look what we're doing. Amazon reached out to us and said, hey, we need to figure out how we can get Workspaces in IGEL so that you guys can distribute it. And I think that came from a lot of different places. I think the real key to what they're doing, though, is it completes the security story end to end on a Workspaces for a Workspaces customer. If you think about it, right, Amazon and the cloud services they provide, they go as far as the software layer, but when it hits the physical portion of what a customer does, they kind of take a step back. And look, they have multiple offerings. They have something called a Snowball, which is this burly little box that can, do Amazon services and link itself back to the Amazon service kind of portfolio. But with end user compute, right, you have a lot of different things here that are really relevant to to what to do. And I think IGEL and our story around providing that next gen cloud OS for it really is relevant.
All right, Mike, I'm going to try something. This is a stretch, but I believe it makes sense. You ready?
Yeah.
If you see what I put in the chat window,
I do. I'm looking at it now.
Coming to America 2, the movie just came out. I haven't watched it. I'm not dying to watch it, but I like the first one, from when I was a little guy, right? 10-year-old, whatever I was. It's been a long time. But do you remember the try the soup joke?
Oh, yeah.
Right? So, okay, if this is hopefully this works. I don't know if our European listeners will get it or not. Maybe they will. I hope they do. But I've got Amazon Desktop as a service. Try the desktop as a service.
Yep.
Try the desktop as a service. Try the desktop. Okay, fine. Give me the spoon. Oh, aha! You got to have the spoon.
Yep.
Right. So you can't get to desktop as a service from any provider without a great spoon, something that works. Right. That's where Linux. I mean, like Windows is kind of like a fork, right? It's awesome. You can do a lot of great stuff with it, but there's a lot of holes in it too. Try the spoon, IGEL Linux, great example of you got to have that endpoint to be able to fully consume the soup.
That's a great example. Wow, you nailed that.
You can have it. You can take that.
I'm just laughing internally because last night I got this note. Yesterday I got this notification. Your laptop running Windows, which I've remote to, needed some updates, and so it turns out it was a Windows 10 serious update. And so I was letting that happen, and I'm sitting here watching it, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm gonna go watch something on Prime. So I'm watching, whatever show it was, and I happened to see that Coming to America thing pop. I was like, I'm not gonna watch that yet. I'll wait. But here I am entertaining myself while I kept checking on my laptop, going through this stuff I remember about 40 minutes in, it is still not yet done yet. And I'm just sitting there going, I'm going to call Andy and see if I can get a virtual desktop.
So I just walked in one of my sales offices. There's 2 people in there, and they're decommissioning their thin clients and using their laptops to hook up to the monitors. And I'm like, oh no, what are you doing? This isn't my model. Don't do this. But they made a good point. They need to be able to get up in the middle of a meeting and go take the meeting outside so they're not right on top of each other. And so it's not a technical problem. I said, well, is the VDI not working for you? Yeah, it works, but we talk over top of each other. So there's a lot more to it, and I was okay with it. But I was like, look, promise me when we get to an office with cubicles, you'll go back to using the thin clients and VDI all the time. And they said, yes, we will. We get it. We get value in it. We just need to be able to grab our laptop and go take a meeting out in the hallway.
Well, I think you bring up a key point, which is from what this journey that we've been on with Amazon for the past 9-10 months, really heads down trying to work on things, is that in this new world, and you could even call it the world that's coming of work from anywhere permanently and post-COVID world, whatever you want to call it. I think that there's no such thing anymore as a one solution fits all. Right. And maybe I'm devaluing the IGEL or the Amazon proposition, but really at the end of the day, right, it's finding the tools, right, in your tool belt as a business that you can use to fix what you need to at a time, right? No one just carries one hammer around, right, and smashes everything. I mean, people try, right? Certain people did in IT, right? Like, hey, virtualization is the key to everything. But at the end of the day, it doesn't work like that, right? You can't use a hammer on everything. And I think that this current pandemic, for good, better, and indifferent from a technology perspective, proved that. And, IGEL provides a very succinct operating system that's focused on providing, connectivity to backend systems. And Windows is this gigantic Swiss Army knife, the size of a, dining room table that has every tool possible. It's a different tool, and it depends on your need, I think.
So, Michael, I had one other thing in your comment. You can't smash everything on the hammer. You kind of can. You possibly can. Not if you want happy end users.
Yeah, there you go.
What we're in to do, right? You got to have at least satisfied, maybe not happy, but satisfied end users.
Yeah, customer experience is everything.
So I think we've firmly established that, at least on this call, we think Linux, or a flavor of Linux, and ideally a nice, beautiful, well put together, securely easy to manage flavor of Linux, aka IGEL, that's very portable and software defined, not tied to hardware, right? Is the answer. So help us understand the part of your blog that says IGEL transports you from the edge to the cloud.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple. Again, I like to explain it like this, right? So when you get internet at your house, you have, if you trace back the wire from where it plugs into your house all the way back to whoever your internet provider is, it follows, a series of utility poles, right? Sometimes it runs on the telephone poles and whatnot. The easiest part about getting that internet out to people is you can, all day you have roads, you have paved roads, you have, existing infrastructure to run that line. The harder part is actually taking that line and hooking it up to every individual person's house, right? That last mile where you're trying to say, hey, look, I have to go into Bob's backyard and he has a tree in the way, or I have to do this. Every situation could potentially be unique. And so I think when we're talking about, that statement you just made about getting from, IGEL to the cloud, from the edge to the cloud, it's really taking that last mile. And that's where IGEL, I think, really fits the bill with Amazon Workspaces to really provide a unique experience where, the Amazon Workspace really provides that data and those apps for that individual user, but getting them to that place and wherever they're at, that's the key.
Right. Chris, any thoughts on that?
No, I was just thinking literally, because I've been contemplating switching my ISP because I literally have Google Fiber right outside my driveway, and I'm sitting there so tempted to just switch it. I was thinking about them coming into my backyard and what they would have to navigate to get it hooked up. But what I like about this part of the blog is the hotel courtesy van. For those that travel, they kind of totally get that, right? I mean,
yeah,
or used to travel, I should say. But I love that idea, right? I mean, if you want to maybe touch on that, that
sure.
idea that we just kind of talked about.
Yeah, no, I mean, beyond the last mile, right? What does IGEL really do at the end of the day? And again, it's a hotel courtesy fan, right? You're with your buddies, you're going to an event in a different city, right? Again, this is, in the before 4 times or the after times, but you're seeing your favorite band. You get a hotel, right? And you want to go to the event that's starting, in 25 minutes. When that, courtesy van or that Uber or whatever pulls up, you don't really care about, the type of tire it is. You don't really care about anything else other than you're going to get there safely and securely and on time, right? And, IGEL is really that kind of invisible layer that's so critical, right, to get you to your, again, we talked about before, the customer experience, right? Your experience, which is going to this event that you want to go to. And so you can imagine kind of the event could be Amazon Workspaces. It could be any one of these other pieces that IGEL supports. And really, users, when you get in there, you don't get a 20-minute dissertation on, hey, this is the air conditioner, and you turn it up to 24 degrees, and it's located here, which is easy for me. You just don't care. You just want to make sure it's comfortable and secure, and it gets to you on time, and that's exactly what IGEL does. It's a good metaphor for it.
Let's try to use that example again. Right now you get in, you got to have your mask on. That's the difference, right? Today.
Yep.
But a couple months from now, you won't even need that. And so, what works for you during the pandemic is still the right answer post-pandemic. So my wife gave me a stat this morning. She's going to get her vaccine today.
Wow.
And she said, as of in the United States, the number of people who have gotten the vaccine now equals the number of people who have gotten sick, I think. Yeah, the number of people who have gotten sick. And that's a big turning point. Yeah. We're going to head down the other side of this thing. We are heading down the other side of this thing. And what worked during the pandemic that people had to hurry up and get done needs to continue to work. Because we're going to work hybrid, right? And it needs to get better and better and better. And again, going back to our comments a while ago, we got clouds, we got desktop as a service, we got IGEL, we've got more better improved applications to get to this stuff, better management. We just got lucky that luck or skill, I'm not sure, it's both, that we just happened to be here when the pandemic of our lifetime, hopefully the only one, happened.
Yeah, it's pretty succinctly put.
Yeah, one thought I had just looking back over the last year or so, one of the benefits that I think IGEL certainly received was manufacturers coming to us because they wanted to standardize and have IGEL as an offering on theirs. And what did that do? Well, they're coming out with new hardware, new chipsets, and things like that. And IGEL historically was not always on the latest and greatest Linux kernel, which obviously adds support for that. Case in point, I had a partner reach out and say, hey, I'm trying this UD Pocket thing. It's got a HP laptop, whatever model it was, and I Googled it and checked it out, and it was fairly new, maybe in the last year or so. And I said, I bet you it's a kernel issue. I sent him a couple of UD Pockets with different versions. He tried the most recent one, we just came out, 11.5, and booted right up, no problems. The other ones would always kind of go black screen, but just I think just further adding to the fact that there are more options, there are more vans right there, if you will. IGEL sort of is beginning to work more and more reliably on these new devices. We've added obviously the Raspberry Pi piece, Citrix only, sorry, not Amazon, not yet. But still, I mean, that's one of the benefits that I see is more hardware support. So you have lots more options available to you.
You bring up a really good point that I just thought of, right? In that same kind of courtesy van Uber model. So what, when it's funny, my wife, domesticated dad here, we just went and leased a minivan. And so, back in the day, you're like, I need navigation, right? And it was always, you never knew what you're gonna get. Was it TomTom? Was it who knows? These days, all you ask for is one thing, at least I do. I want AirPlay, right? I want to be able to plug in my phone. It mirrors what I already have there. I think IGEL in that case, right? That car could be any model. It could be a Sprinter van. It could be a Toyota. It could be anything. But really, the experience of AirPlay is pretty much going to be the same in all those. And I think that's what IGEL adds, is the ability to get that same experience no matter what you're in, so that you're able to kind of quickly, get in tune with that and get back to what you need to do quickly. That's a great point.
How old are your kids, Mike?
I only have one. I only have a 5-year-old daughter, but my wife and my daughter are extremely extroverted. And so, we have our little COVID pod, as we call it, where we all get tested and whatnot. And so they're always running around doing things. So,
yeah. This is another example how far things have come. I don't know how old Chris's kids are, but my youngest 3 grew up in a world where we had to deal with VHS tapes in our minivans.
Yeah.
I remember having to pull over like 3 times on a trip to the beach and rewind the Wheels on the Bus video. Rewind. Our listeners don't even know what rewind means.
Nope.
Yeah, my kids are in college, by the way, so I'm on.
Not only that, but at one time the tape in the VHS tape broke. Oh,
that was end of the world.
First world problems back in the early 2000s.
Yeah, I'm at a part now where we bought for my daughter a Honda CR-V type thing, and it's not with her at college, but it came with the DVD player, and we never really use it. But she's now of age where she can drive it, so I'm gonna start bringing some DVDs and let her drive them, sitting out in the back. You're like, yeah, you take it,
Yeah. But it's funny, to your point, the reality of having a 5-year-old these days is that she has a Kindle and she has my Nintendo Switch that she plays. She calls it hers, but it's mine. And we regulate all those things via my iPhone apps, right? So we put limits on it during the day. Like, you only get 2 hours a day, and it gives her a little warning at the top, right? Like, you got 20 minutes left, and she gets so bent out of shape when it happens. But it's a good point. It's amazing that, from VHS tapes to, setting a time limit via your cell phone on your other kids' devices. It's crazy how far we've come.
Well, I'm thinking about the future. This came out sort of last week. I saw this. We've added yet another vendor. OnLogic, for example, has a hardened thin client device, right? This thing is, battle
industrial
worthy,
grade,
if you will. Industrial grade, right? And I started thinking about this. One of our sales the guys mentioned this thing's Jeep worthy, right? And I said, let's think about it. We got self-driving cars. We got 5G going national. Look at what happened with just LTE, some of the businesses that came about that weren't in existence 10 years ago, for example. What's going to happen in a 5G world when you have, you could easily fire up and access your DAS from a car driving down the highway that's being driven by itself. I'm not volunteering to be the first to be able to do that, but it's not going to be far-fetched to be able to work literally while driving down the highway, or perhaps even in rural America somewhere.
Well, take self-driving cars, right? And the advent of that. At that point, with that kind of connectivity you have now of a mobile office in a post-COVID world where, privacy and, health security, if you want to call it as such, is key. That becomes a huge use case.
Yeah. So I'd say in about 2 years, or who knows? it's you look what happened, like the Ford released the electric Mustang. People were like, I'm going to go for that instead of the Tesla. Tesla's now got competition. It's always good to see the innovation comes out of that, right? I mean, so.
And quick note on that, if you asked Ford 5 years ago, what kind of company are you becoming, they would have told you a technology company.
Yep. Yeah, they had a partnership with Microsoft back in the day with, what they did there. I had a Ford that it was like that. It was a fun little car, but yeah, had to replace tires on it about every 3 months. But yeah, absolutely.
It reminds me of a story I heard about Ray Kroc, the guy that founded McDonald's. He was at asking MBA candidates, what kind of company is McDonald's? And they're like, well, are you kidding me? You're fast food, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, nope, real estate company. And they're like, think they had the most real estate in the world, but he put it at strategic locations to drive traffic, so it's all in perspective.
All right.
It's true.
Here's one for you guys. Real estate today is a physical thing, right? It's property.
Ooh, I know where you're going.
What's the real estate of the future?
It's WeWork.
Well, that's a hybrid of it. What's the future? What's the most important real estate?
Your employees.
What is it?
Your employees.
No, think of clouds. Amazon, AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google GCP, where they have physical real estate that they lease out to you in a service. That's real estate of the future.
Yeah, I can see that from AWS, right? Like integrated, you go to a place, I live in Seattle, right? So what used to be a bustling Amazon-centric place where there's, hundreds of thousands of employees is now kind of dead. In fact, I live just outside of Seattle, and I have a couple of friends who were severely impacted because of COVID. One owned 2 restaurants, and their primary goal was to service the people at lunchtime at Amazon. And now he's going to school for coding now. I mean, it's crazy how much it flips on its head. And you're absolutely right. I mean, I can totally see the future of those places becoming a service like that.
I'm watching The Founder, the Ray Kroc movie, and I'm sitting there going, that's the cloud. The future of that real estate footprint that you allow somebody to use, but you control your destiny and theirs. That's the cloud, specifically IaaS cloud.
Yeah, the service model is crazy these days, and everything can be made as a service, right? I mean, back to the kid thing, right? Kids expect a service, right? They expect to turn it on and just consume something, right? People just want to consume something. They don't want to have to build it. They don't have to mess with it. They don't want to have to, read the manual. They just want to be able to consume it and go. I agree.
Yeah. I was sitting there just watching, I was in a grocery line, and the lady in front of me was finishing up, and I look and I see this baby. I'm assuming she's probably maybe 2 years old, but she had her mom's oversized whatever phone it was. I mean, about the size of half the size of her body, but she's sitting there and she's moving her fingers up and down. I'm sitting there going, holy crap.
Yeah. Well, and talk about, I think, Andy, you brought up a great point in that case, in that vein, Chris, which is talent, right? The talent of the future, the employees that you expect to bring in as a business, they're going to have expectations, and they're going to make decisions based on, the ability that they have to do their jobs anywhere and to do it quickly. And, they don't want to go to these legacy models. So it's going to be very critical they can do that kind of stuff.
Now I have something for you guys on that. Well, first of all, let me say that the real estate thing I've been talking about, that's all well and good, but you need to provide a service that gets people to that real estate, like Microsoft, WVD, Amazon, Workspaces. And then once they get there, once you have them as a captive audience, then it becomes the consumption model.
Right.
The real estate of the future. Do you want a 1-bedroom, a studio, a 3-bedroom? You're going to pay for whatever. Do you want to view? Do you not want to view? All those same logic applies. To go back to Mike's comment just now, the kids of the future are going to expect everything easy and as a service. Now, at the same time, who in the world is going to ask them and help them figure out what their IP address is when you got to troubleshoot something? I had a student from one of the top universities in the country, computer science kid, worked for me as an intern the other year, and I told him, just connect these 2 computers and we'll make a lab and I'll teach you stuff. And he just plugged the wire in and he thought it would just work. That's it. No idea of networking or how, TCP/IP works or routing or host names. It just had no clue. No one ever taught him that.
Well, to that point, I mean, I go back to, I'm kind of showing my age now, but I remember when, you had a 486 or, computer 386, and you had to configure the IRQ settings. Remember those?
Oh,
You don't have
gosh.
to do that anymore, right? You don't. And I think what you're going to see is, and this is a natural evolution of technology, is you're going to see some of those things that we hold dear that are components of, what we feel like are technology competent people go away. But what they bring in place, right, is this more ethereal approach towards, maybe maybe you don't see desktop administrators in the future or application packagers. Maybe you see, customer experience gurus, right? And these guys are 100%, and guys and gals, right? These people are 100% focused on creating the best experience, and they don't need technical ability. What they're doing is they're combining services and deploying those to users in real time based on what they need.
Yeah. So on that note, I'm going to share a quick little nugget. If you just Google CompTIA A+ training, there's a 4 hour and 55-minute video that covers the entire class and everything in the big massive book that I went through 25 years ago. Yep. It's all in there. It is absolutely awesome. So if you want to be an up-and-comer and differentiate yourself versus all the other up-and-comers, go learn the basics of how Ethernet works versus token ring. You can do it in 4.5-5 hours, and it's awesome.
Yeah, there's a lot out there. I think you bring up another good point, which is, for everyone listening out there, I mean, what's your kind of path now, right? And this is something I'm curious about, because I find it for myself, and I think everyone gets to this, is, what's in the future? Is it, are you looking to be, as a technology professional, focus on security or cloud or something, again, more ethereal, like, some kind of experience thing? I'm always fascinated by how these things are going to kind of project themselves and what's going to come out of that. What are going to be kind of the mainstays that you look for talent in the future? It really fascinates me.
Yeah. We're all going to have different roles to play, without a doubt.
Yeah. Multiple hats. Totally agree.
All right. Well, guys, I think we've covered the blog. Mike, great having you on. If you
too.
Next time you write something, you just proactively reach out to Chris and I.
Okay.
We had a great conversation about the blog and just in general around concepts. Awesome.
No, you guys are great to talk to, and yeah, whatever IGEL can do to support you, Andy, and anyone else out there, we're more than happy to do it. And you guys are awesome, and I appreciate the time. Yeah,
you guys are kind of our model. Build a community, service, and then service the community with a business. That's how we want to do it. And if we can't do it that way, we'll just go find something else to do.
You're doing a great job, so fair enough.
IGEL way. All right, Chris Feeney, before we let you go, any topics, things you want to bring up?
Always, IGEL's always got new things announcing. So just, stay on the lookout for that post disrupt. So nothing hot and heavy, at least at the moment. But March is about almost halfway through. Hard to believe. April's coming, and there'll be some new stuff to talk about here. So stay tuned.
You guys are always evolving. I may need your help on a customer demo on Friday. Mark Henderson on my team reached out to me last night. I may need you to jump in if you have time, but let's talk about that afterwards. Mike, anything else from you? What's coming next in Mike's world?
Mike's world now is all about going to market now with Amazon, right? So beyond Workspaces, we also support Amazon Connect, as well as Amazon AppStream via browser. So you can actually run those two on a Raspberry Pi, which is kind of cool. And really just kind of hitting the streets, right? And making sure that, we reach out to the current IGEL Amazon Workspaces customers, and, anyone else out there that has Amazon specific EUC needs, we're ready to go. So that's really our focus, I think, for the next, 3 to 6 months at this point.
And Mike, you touched on something briefly there. I think you guys mentioned the Raspberry Pi, the X420 or whatever it is that we had the podcast about the other day, but it's Citrix only in the IGEL world today. And part of that's because Citrix has invested a lot in their app to connect via a Raspberry Pi ARM processor. Are you able to talk at all about what you guys are doing around Amazon with that? You just mentioned Raspberry Pi. I don't know if I'm in the right context, but is that something you talk about at all, or we'll just leave people hanging?
No, absolutely. I think one of the things that we're looking at, right, and this is, again, attributed to the way that Amazon creates their service focus, is Amazon has a streaming application platform called AppStream, and then they have another service called Amazon Connect, which is pretty much a call center in a box, right? As a end user, you can open up a browser, you can plug in a pair of headphones, and you can log into a website, and you can actually become part of a call center anywhere you're at. And so both of those things actually run extremely well via an HTML5 web browser. So it could be Firefox, it could be Chromium. So from a Raspberry Pi perspective, right, with all the goodness that Citrix brings, I think diversification from an application perspective is good. So being able to bring in an app stream or connect in that case is awesome. You can do that today, and we've lightly tested the connect piece, and it works awesome. So
HTML5 browser and it's maybe not the Citrix Workspace app, but it's connectivity, and you're ready to go, and you have all the other beautiful things that are available in the Amazon world.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking to, when you're looking at the roles of those you're looking to support, I think from an IT perspective, you're looking at mostly task workers for these cases, right? Those that need to be, again, call center BDO focus is huge, and then looking at maybe just accessing apps to either gather information or input information, basic light stuff. You can absolutely do that. And look, I think that's the sweet spot for the IGEL and computing Raspberry Pi offering anyways. So I think both of those are awesome.
Yeah. Well, Chris, I've still got my Raspberry Pi, my RX 420 waiting right here. I'm just waiting on you to tell me it's go time and the best possible, the right firmware, and maybe you can come down here and help me play with it one day, but you let me know when it's time.
Yeah, I think we had originally planned to come down there. We'll definitely do that. I actually was going to fire mine up now that we have gone GA with this thing.
Yep.
So I just need to find out if I've got the current firmware that should be GA. Yeah, we'll get that taken care of.
And by the way, there is an experimental service on that actually updates the firmware automatically.
Yeah. I did. Yeah, I tried that out, and it works pretty cool. It's cloud hosted, right? I mean, that's really what it is.
Yep. As far as I know. So.
And for those that you were listening, Chris used his air quotes when GA. So it's when did that happen, Chris?
Officially disrupt, right? It is now GA, so there should be an official version of firmware that will run on the Pi, and the licensing works the same. It's put it on a Pi device, put it on a UD Pocket, whatever. It's not any specific new licensing as far as that goes. But I mean, it's a nice form factor. I mean, it weighs like 1 ounce. I mean, it's really small, easily portable. Native dual monitors. I mean, it's a great little tool, right? And cheaper, I should say.
All for this podcast, all we need is it for Amazon Workspaces, and it would be a full checkbox.
Yeah,
it's coming, believe me. So,
all right, guys. Awesome. Well, thank you for the time today. Always good. Mike, we'll do it again. Let us know when you have some content you want to review. Chris, thanks as always. We should probably chat. If you give me a quick call after the recording here, that would be awesome.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks all.
All right. Take care.
Talk soon. Be safe.